Hello, Cubs fans, and welcome to a brand new edition of Cubs on Tap. I am Ron Luce. I probably look ridiculous right now, and I will get to this
You look
here
great.
in a little bit. I feel comfortable, Juice, and it's amazing. But I am Ron Luce, and I am joined with the one, the only, the Juice. The Juice and Luce show is back on this random Tuesday night in late December. The holidays are drawing near, but before we get into everything that we have on our docket today, Juice, my friend, how are you doing, sir?
Good, man. Digging the FOCO blanket today.
Thank you.
Absolutely love it. Things are good. Some people probably saw me yesterday for 10 minutes on Dinger's Pod. Awesome news. I felt like part of like the Empire in Star Wars yesterday. Yeah. Like it's gonna start to be like a problem for everybody else. For us, this is sky's the limit, man. But for everybody else, it's like the evil empire taking over. But no, yeah, it was fun to get on with those guys, do that announcement. I'm excited to have them here. I know you were gonna give them a welcome as well in just a second. But I am going to eventually. We're going to talk about some Cubs baseball, but I want to immediately just put out like a little Aaron Rodgers relax. To everybody, deep breaths. Everything's going to be okay.
It's all going to be fine. And yeah, I mean, Juice, what a way to start, man. First and foremost, welcome to the Dingers podcast. They are now a part of the On Tap Sports Network. If you didn't check out the official release or check out episode 102 that they recorded on Monday, be sure to do so. You can catch that over on their YouTube channel. Their YouTube channel is also linked in the article on the On Tap Sportsnet website. That is linked under the Cubs page as well as the On Tap news page. So you can find that there on tapsportsnet.com. Go check that out. It's got all the guys' Twitter handles. If you listen to Cubs on Tap, you probably know all of them or at least most of them. Mitch, Jake, Kevin, and Jeff, all great guys. Obviously, I've been lucky enough to get to know them quite a bit. We do a fantasy baseball league with them dating all the way back to last season. So it's cool having the Dingers pod now as again, we're both still our own shows. We are still Cubs on Tap. They are still Dingers. But the beauty of it is we're going to have a lot of cool cross collaboration and some internal, banter and fun throughout the year. It's going to be really, really cool. And we're really, really stoked to have those guys. So welcome to them. And Jake already in the comments said, let's go, boys. We're all fired up too, man. And sorry, Jeremiah, I know you're Pelicans, man. I'm sorry. He's also looking for his pretzels, just like
yes, I know. I actually was going to start taking like Christmas orders and sending out. So if you want to drop in my DMs on Twitter, if you have a Twitter and send your address, I will be sending pretzels.
Just a big ass bag of pretzels. That's juicy.
But first, we got to just first dive into what this beautiful blanket hoodie you got going on. Because if we're talking about giving gifts out, what a perfect gift for a loved one this holiday season.
This is a sweet gift. So first, for starters, I will quickly just explain what I am wearing for those that are watching this live. If you're not watching this live,
I also need you to like pull back and do like a straight like Kendall Jenner walk. Catwalk thing.
I don't know if I can do that from this camera.
You got enough room?
Oh yeah. No, I don't. Well, I don't know. Maybe we'll find out here in a second. But for those watching at home, and again, if you aren't watching us but you listen to the podcast, we highly encourage go over to YouTube, click the little bell icon. You'll know when we go live. You can also find us on Facebook Live. Obviously, we're on Twitter Live, but we want you to join the conversation with us. So make sure to either go on Facebook or YouTube, just as our friends like Jake, Jeremiah, and now Scott have joined us in the comments here via YouTube. But Juice, I am wearing a it's called a wearable blanket. And for those at home, you've probably seen these. These are, I don't want to use the word trend. I don't think they're really a trend. They've become popular in the last few years, I think is a good way to put it. And it's incredibly comfortable. Obviously, it's this really big wearable like hoodie. It's Cubs. It's two colors. You can see my sleeves are the different colors, red and blue. I got the fuzz on the inside. It's reversible too, for those that are curious. So I can reverse it and look like Little Bo Peep who lost all of her sheep, and you can see the little Cubs logo on the inside there. That'll sit right on your chest if you reverse it inside out. I'll probably wear it like this, A, because the colors are cool and tough, and B, I like the warmth on the inside. So I am wearing this wearable blanket, but Juice, like you said, if you're giving gifts, you're wondering where you can get this. You can get this from our friends over at FOCO. We're working with the FOCO guys now. They've sent us some cool stuff to show you guys of what is available on their website, foco.com. We will also have a link in the podcast description. We'll also make sure it makes its way into the YouTube description, even if it is just as a comment. It'll be there as well. And you can also go and search on the OnTap Sportsnet website, search gift guide, and the most recent gift guide for this year has a lot of cool FOCO items in that as well. So you can link directly to their page and find all of that. Thanks to our friends at FOCO for sending me this cool thing. Juice is already jealous and is already planning on buying one himself. And I will probably wear this for quite a few episodes during the cold months because this.
I just want to like just set the tone for like if you go ahead and buy a his and hers version of that, the inside looks very hers-ish. It does. It's very
fuzzy,
Sherpa trendy right now. That is very his as you have it flipped. You turn on the fireplace, so you light a fire, set the mood, have some wine, and set the mood. And see, this gift isn't just giving in the way of warmth; it's giving in so many different ways. Definitely go over to FOCO and make sure that you guys are using those blanket hoodies because they're fantastic. I have one. I got a Bears one myself.
Yeah, they are so warm, folks. I actually have to take the hood off because I'm starting to sweat. That's how warm these things are. They're fantastic. It's cold in my basement, but I can't even tell that it's cold in my basement because of how warm this thing is. So, again, big shout out over to our friends at FOCO. Juice, we've addressed some of the cool things. Obviously, our friend Dinger's coming over. And Scott is wondering, speaking of Dingers really quick, will Cubs on Tap be entering the Dingers predictions bit for next season?
Maybe.
Maybe. We've talked to them about that. And, you know, that is very much their thing, right? The Dinger picks for every game. And they credit to them for keeping track of it over the whole season because we tried to do that with our Fly the W picks. And a lot of people see how that goes. It's tough. It's hard. So credit to them. We are going to have some type of like internal
competition.
Competition, for lack of a better word, of something Cubs related, of who can guess like the most right or who can, predicts the best, or we're going to figure that out between now and opening day at the end of March. So we got some time for that, but that's a good question, Scott, because I know a lot of people are interested in that. And, but Juice, speaking of things that I'm interested in, I'm interested to hear some of your thoughts because there's been a lot of shit going on in the MLB hot stove here over just really the last 48 hours. Obviously, the biggest ones involving catchers, as well as a couple of pitchers signing. Since the last time we talked, Kodai Senga signed with the New York Mets. Boo. Sean Manaea has signed with the San Francisco Giants, a 2-year deal. Even guy that we were thinking could come to Chicago had it not been for the Bellinger signing. Kevin Kiermaier signed in Toronto. But more importantly, a 3-way trade between the Braves, Brewers, and Athletics. It was a deal of catchers. Obviously, some other prospects and players were involved. But the big 3 names in the trade: Sean Murphy, a guy that the Cubs were reportedly linked to at least a little bit, is off to Atlanta, and Atlanta's dealing two of their catchers, I should say, away. Manny Pena is heading to the Athletics as the kind of marquee name for the A's. And then heading just north of our border is brother of Wilson Contreras, William Contreras. So now there's 2 Contrerases in the NL Central that are just going to absolutely abuse the Cubs. Inevitably, we just know how that's going to go because the Brewers and Cardinals are really good at doing that, and that's just going to make it worse. But Juice, on top of that, there was even more that happened in the last 48 hours. Christian Vasquez is now off the market. He's up in Minnesota on a 3-year contract that was worth $30 million. Chris Bassett signed with the Toronto Blue Jays for a 3-year deal worth over $30 million, over $20 million a season. Hard doing math on the fly here, Juice. Mike Zunino is now off the market as well. Another catcher, just a 1-year deal with the Cleveland Guardians, among other things. And even Ross Stripling, another pitching arm out on the market, is signing with the Giants as well. So, Juice, it's been a busy last couple of really, I can't even say days because it hasn't even been days yet. It's really been not even 48 hours since most of this has occurred. What are your thoughts? I wrote an article over at On Tap yesterday, kind of talking more so about the catching market, but I think in general, Juice, where do you think this leaves the Cubs with all this action? And obviously, in this transaction mill, the Cubs logo is nowhere to be found outside of a couple of minor moves.
Yeah, I want to be the guy who jumps up and down and is really upset because I think it's warranted. But I also feel like we're grading on an incomplete set of circumstances. So still, there's still a path. There's definitely a path to making this team much better going into next year. And for the Murphy thing, like I read that they were interested, but then you start to wonder, what were the prospects that were going back? That way, it's very difficult to trade prospects as of right now if you're the Cubs because you've just rebuilt that system. You want to make sure that you give these guys some time to grow before you're just shipping them away. And maybe you're potentially shipping away, perennial all-stars just because, you get a catcher in return that in terms of the catcher market, I hope everybody really likes Yan Gomes because that just seems like that's the route that it's going to be next year. I know we talked a lot in the previous episode. I don't know if you're on that one with Joey, talking about PJ Higgins and his, defensive and discrepancies behind the plate and, his lack of ability there. But I still I don't think it's a failure of an offseason if they go out and get Correa. You know what I'm saying? Like, to me, that if the moves are you get Correa and you got Bellinger, a potential, bounce back MVP candidate because he was one at one point, and you got a very reliable arm in Tyon, and you have all this pitching development that we saw over the course of the back half of last year, there are a lot of options to run that rotation out the way it is right now. Would it make me excited about it? No, because I would absolutely love for them to sign the front of the rotation arm. But I think the hard part as we sit here as fans is to decipher between are the Cubs being cheap and are the Cubs just not a destination yet? Because you got to look in terms of some of these guys are signing, I think, for less dollars to go win. I mean, it's been reported that Senga had a better deal out there, but he went to the Mets because they're in win now mode, and that's what he preferred. Same with was it Turner or Bogarts? One of the two guys had a better deal out there. So yeah, money talks, but I think too, with all these opt-out clauses that are being built into a lot of these and the long, term money and dollars and years that these guys are throwing, it's hard to say no. I laughed because remember when we were sitting about the potential offseason stuff and we were talking about, could the Cubs get, some of these guys on a quick 3-4 year deal that's just high AVV? That's just not going to – the Cubs are going to have to give Correa 8-9 years. That's just And the problem that I have is a lot of these GMs and these owners are looking at these contracts. They know the last 4 years of some of these deals are going to be just brutal. I mean, you're going to be paying for the past performances and not the future with some, which the Cubs could absolutely do, eat it, and have the ability to still be buyers in the market. But I won't. It just seems like the Cubs have been interested in Correa, has been the number one name from the beginning, and he hasn't signed yet. So I don't think we can jump to conclusions that they're not going to get one of them. It obviously becomes more of a competitive market when teams like the Giants have missed out on certain names, and now more and more teams are becoming dark horses because they've missed out on players. But I think at the end of the day, the Cubs are going to be the team that – it's already been rumored that Correa loved going to his workout and playing at Wrigley Field. B, I think that they've been in on this discussion since the start, and maybe they went to Boris and said, hey, go out there, try to find your best, and come back with it, and we'll up it. Because it seems like Carlos wants to be there. I think now the path of where we would be up in arms is if they don't get Dansby Swanson or Carlos Correa, because I think that just sets a bad example for the future.
Yeah.
And if you look at the market for next year, there's no guarantee that those names will be there. Right. I mean, it's absolutely plausible to see Shohei Ohtani re-upping somewhere, being traded and then being re-upped there's a lot of moving parts on this, but that's why I still hold out hope, because if I'm Jed, I'm sitting with all this money still yet to spend, and a guy that's at the top of this market who very much wants to be here. Through all reports, I don't know if that's true or not, but everything we've heard has said that Carlos Correa likes playing at Wrigley, wants to be a Cub.
Yep.
I think that we're at the point where Boris is just out there fielding deals from all these other teams, and he'll go back to the Cubs and say, match it, or increase your offer, or he's going here. And I think that that's how this gets done.
Yeah, and Juice, before diving more focused into the Correa Swanson stuff, because there was a report that came out today that I wrote about that I want to kick the tires on you with a little bit, and I know you've already kind of started us down that road, but I think right now, looking at the catching position, I think the Cubs, something that I actually saw, and I want to say it was Mitch from Dingers who brought this up on Twitter. He said that maybe Jed has faith that Amaya is going to be up this season at some point, and they haven't felt the need to go get one of the top guys. It is still worth noting that Omar Narvaez is still on the market. He's not a terrible catcher by any stretch of imagination, probably the best available option still out there. If you really want to deal with just a guy who's a defensive catcher and he's not going to give you much with the bat, Tucker Barnhart is still out there, is probably the number 2 at that point to Yan Gomes. So I think Yan Gomes is still your better option. I think Narvaez is the only one that reasonably splits evenly with a Yan Gomes at this point, at least off the free agent market, right? But to your point, right, like we want to see them go get a big pitcher. And there are still some decent names left out there, and guys that can make a pretty legitimate impact this year, and there's other guys out there. But I agree with you in the sense of like, there are still a lot of moves to be made. Like there are still, writers over at The Athletic, like Jim Bowden, and that we're going to talk about his article here in a moment, but he's still ranking his top 25 remaining free agents. There's still a lot of bodies out on the market. Yeah. A lot of guys have signed, but I think it's worth reminding people that a lot of guys are still out there. And, Jeremiah chimes in here really quick. It says, would we hate it if they signed Gary Sanchez? Is a number 2 catcher? I don't hate it. He's got a decent bat.
I don't think that there's moves after this. Once all of these top and these rebound candidates, especially with the position the Cubs are in, I don't think there's a bad move there if the years make sense and the dollar amount makes sense.
Yep.
I mean, anybody who is a highly touted catcher years ago that is a potential bounce back candidate should be on this team next year, because there's a realistic point where we're looking at this roster and we don't know if they're going to be a very average baseball team, below average baseball team, or a very good baseball team going into next year. I mean, this could be the year where we look at these where we look at like deals as last year, where there's 1 year prove it deals. And if they can figure it out and they work hard enough for a longer term deal, then they'll definitely do it. But I don't mind the idea of bounce back candidates. I really don't, especially when, let's be honest, like even if the Cubs went out there and signed the top remaining free agent pitcher of your choice, Carlos Correa, Dansby Swanson, we wouldn't be like a World Series favorite. We would still be a team that is growing, has some optimism for the future, but wouldn't be a favorite in the NL. And we probably would be a really middle of the pack kind of odds to win the World Series or to get there. Yeah. So I think that like all these bounce back candidates, it becomes like a free year for a tryout for a lot of it. And like Bellinger, that's a great move. If he rakes during the year and you're out of it, you trade him for another prospect that's maybe closer to, the major leagues, or maybe you sign him and he becomes your left fielder if you don't bring back Ian Happ, or your DH for the future, or like a swing guy in the outfield. That's a great move. And maybe Brendan Davis is a guy who there's a lot of different factors that are going to go into this that the minor leagues are definitely got to push through. Like, I mean, we don't know what we're going to get out of Brendan Davis next year. We could get the Brendan Davis that was on a tear before he had the back injury. Yep. Same with like Miguel Amaya. Who knows how far along in his, his progression he's at, his development. So I think that like deep breaths, like there are moves that I'm mad that they didn't make. Like I thought Christian Vasquez was like slam dunk. That's easy. You know, it's a position of need. It wasn't going to cost too much. It's a good move, good clubhouse. Guy knows how to win. You know, there's a lot of things that like made sense about that deal. Senga, yeah, I would have loved to have him. He was in my plans with a Z. But if he took less money to go play for the Mets because the Mets are in win now mode, I mean, what can you do? You can only offer so much money and say, hey, we're going to be really, really good in like the next 3 or in the last 3 years of your deal.
Yeah.
I mean, what can you do? You can't. This is where they're at. So we could either cry and moan about it and look back at the past, because I've seen a lot of that recently of guys like, oh, well, if we just kept this guy and this guy and this guy, you know, maybe if we bought here. Well, there's no use crying over spilled milk anymore. There's just not. This is where we're at. So deal with it, move forward, and have some damn hope that Jed Hoyer has the ability to sign these guys and the resources to do it. Like, it just makes sense. And if they fall flat on their face, we'll all be at Cubs Con screaming at them. Trust me, we will. It'll absolutely be there. But
that's nice.
But that's not where we're at right now. There's plenty of routes to make this, to turn this thing from what feels like sour to sweet.
I was going to say, Scott's, I think, hoping for a little sour juice. He mentioned it in our comments here that some sour juice is brewing. And Jake chopping in with loving your optimism, Juice. And to your point, right, a quick one-year guy that I think of that I have a little piece in the works about. It's taken me a little longer than I was hoping for. But a guy like Noah Syndergaard, who is on the market. Who
I like that move too.
Yeah. Bring him
Why
in
not?
on a one-year contract, maybe a second year for an option if things work out or whatever, and just see what happens. There are plenty of those guys on the market, and you've seen the Cubs do it time and time again, especially with pitching, right? Like, why wouldn't a Corey Kluber make sense? Everybody's like, Corey Kluber's old. Corey Kluber started 31 games last year and had a 4.30 ERA in the AL East. Like, I'll take that on. He signed for 1 year, $8 million last year, and it became 13 because he hit all of his incentive points. I would take that kind of deal out of him again for 1 year. Plus, the familiarity makes sense in the front office with Carter Hawkins because he was there in Cleveland when Kluber was Klubot and was, a Cy Young favorite every single year. So I really think there are plenty of those options. But Juice, let's talk about the big stuff, right? Because two kind of contradicting reports have come out over the last 48 hours regarding the Cubs and the shortstop market. Because over the weekend, there was a rumor and a report. Obviously, this had to have come because Freddie Freeman was at Dansby Swanson's wedding, which congratulations, Dansby, for getting married. He and Mallory getting married. Congratulations to them. But, now supposedly the Dodgers have their hand in the metaphorical Dansby Swanson cookie jar. Everybody's got their hand in a shortstop that needs a shortstop, folks. It's not just the Cubs in on every guy. But over the last couple of, yesterday we heard it was, yesterday being Monday in context, we heard that it was the Giants and the Twins that were the top two for Correa. Now today, Jim Bowden writes a piece of his top 25 free agents left. And a lot of his descriptions for players are just like where they might fit and what they bring to the table. But his profile bits for Correa and Swanson were a little different. Here's why. He said for Correa that the Twins and the Cubs remain the two with the inside track, but all it takes is one owner to say yes, and that could totally change. I'm assuming that's the Giants. I'm assuming that's one of these bigger teams that, maybe hasn't been in the market the whole time for him, but are very much like, hey, we're kind of keeping an eye on this and seeing where it goes. Then you read down a little further because he's the number one guy on the market. Rodon is his number two. But then you get to number three, and that is Dansby Swanson. And he said, the Cubs are the favorite and the most likely to sign Swanson if they miss on Correa, was his exact words in the article. And if you want to read a little bit about what I had to say, more from a news standpoint than anything, you can check that out over on tapsportsnet.com. Yes, shameless plug. But this is where I want to talk to you about this, Juice, because this report now, to your point, right, about hope and having faith and having a little bit of wait and see approach is, based on these two reports, I'm starting to think that, I got a quick analogy for you, Juice. I know we love
I love them.
We love analogies that Cubs on Tap. my analogy, this is my analogy for the position, right? Remember when you were a kid, there was that one toy that you were just dying to have. You were just begging Santa Claus to get you, right? You put it on the top of your Christmas list and you were ready, right? You were pumped and you were excited. And even, maybe your parents said they looked and they were like, I don't know, I don't know, Juice, or I don't know, Ron, you might not be able to, Santa's got a lot of gifts to deliver. That one might be a hard one for him. Oh, okay. That's fine. That's been the rumors and reports so far with these top shortstop. But then today it was like the you overheard the conversation of Santa and one of his elves. And they're like, yeah, we could deliver that to Ron and Juice. Yeah, then why not? Yeah, we could totally pull that off. That's kind of what today felt like. It's all of a sudden like, oh shit, maybe we will be opening a Carlos Correa or a Dansby Swanson for Christmas as Cubs fans. You know what I mean? Like, it really feels like that is still a possibility. And you and I have talked about it, Juice. We talked about it with Joey and with Tyler. And I'm looking forward to, more conversations in the future. But I know the Dingers guys have also talked about this too, is, it almost feels like the quieter things are for the Cubs, the better. Because to me, that means Jed is doing shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, the Cubs have been pretty good as an overall team about like keeping their cards kind of close to their chest. Like, let's talk about it really quick, because the Tyon signing really was the only one that we were like, okay, that was expected, because the report started coming out a couple days before that the Cubs were heavily talking to him. The Bellinger signing kind of came out of left field. Like, everything we kept hearing for the longest time was Toronto. He's going to the Blue Jays. He's going to the Blue Jays. He's going to the Blue Jays. And then all of a sudden it was like, bam, he's signing with the Cubs. And everyone's like, oh shit, would you look at that? It's kind of starting to have the same feel where like the San Francisco Giants and the Twins, Giants and the Twins, Giants and the Twins, Giants and the Twins, and then with Dansby, it's, the Dodgers and the Braves, but then all is quiet with the Cubs name in these reporters' mouths. And it's like, maybe that's a good thing. Because as we saw with the Bellinger move, that came out of absolutely nowhere. Nobody had that report until it was real, right? I'm hoping it's the same case with guys like Correa and Swanson. And again, obviously, I think all of us can sit here and probably confidently agree that we want Correa more. He's the younger shortstop. He's probably the more complete player overall. He brings you a little more of that on base. He still brings you the elite defense. He brings you the pop. He hits you a little higher average than Swanson. But Dansby Swanson, if he's your consolation prize, is not a bad consolation prize, right? That's like asking for the radio flyer bike, but you get like the mongoose bike instead, right? When you're a kid, like, it's still pretty damn cool. I'm going to be happy about it regardless. It's just not maybe your first choice, and that's okay. And Juice, that's where I want to talk to you and dial in a little more on these shortstops here, is because, in your eyes, like, how do you ultimately see this playing out, and when? I want to know, like, when you feel like this is going to happen, because I have my own thought of, like, realistically when we could see a Correa/Swanson signing, but I would love to also hear your thoughts on that. So, what are your thoughts on Correa Swanson? And then do you have like hey, I think we hear X by X?
Yeah, I think we hear about both of them prior to Christmas, because I think Correa's market moves first. And then the Cubs will do whatever they have to do to make sure they bring Dansby Swanson in, because the Cubs can't walk away without one of these guys. They just can't. And it may end up being a massive overpay for Dansby Swanson, but with the way that baseball is moving with the new rules and the emphasis on defense, it may not be the worst thing. I'm not going to say that like he's a better overall baseball player than Carlos Correa. I'm not, because he's not. But there's worse shortstops you can have. And an elite, it would be an elite defensive middle infield with him and Nico Horner at second base.
Oh, yeah.
And then maybe you open up to buying that. And I know people are going to hate this, but maybe next year is the year that you end up getting that big bat, and that's a Devers at third. And how awesome of an infield would that be? You figure out first base if it's not Bellinger or Mervis, and your infield's pretty much set at that point. And then that gives it another year for guys like Amaya and Pablo Aliendo, who I am very high on, who ended the year in high A. It's going to be a little bit longer for his development, but I very much see him as a move through the system quicker than you think guy. So maybe you're looking at that catching market being kind of solved internally, opposed to an outside trade or something. But that's the other thing too, that like the more and more time goes on, the more and more candidates that are going to be available to be dealt for as teams, jump out of their window to compete. As some of these owners spend too much and need to shed some cap. There's definitely things that are going to influence, who's going to be available. But I think that I think Correa heats up sooner rather than we think. I mean, if you look through the timeline of reading, the process of what he's done, he's taken meetings. He had, during the winter meetings, he had his hotel kind of staked out to where teams were coming to meet with him. I know the Cubs had a nice, long, good conversation with them during the winter meetings. And I think now, like, as the market starts to kind of set itself, it's going to be interesting to see, how quickly this moves, because I do think that, like, the moves that have been made and the names that have dropped off of the free agent run for Jed Hoyer only makes it so much more important they land one of these guys. So if your preferred one is Correa and you're at the point where you need to sign somebody or the fan base is going to be very upset, and you may even have an owner that's upset about it, because let's talk about how this was the first report of the first year that a guy came out and said, yeah, Ricketts has absolutely backed Jed Hoyer to do whatever he can to get this team competitive as soon as it can be. And even Scott Boras said the Tom drum is beaten. So, right. I mean, if this fails, it's not on the back of the Ricketts. I want to make sure I say that. If this fails, it's Jed. Jed had all of the green lights to do whatever he needed to do, and maybe he mismanages the market. I don't blame the Ricketts family. I just don't, because we watched how much payroll came off of last year's, run in terms of, big names coming off. They didn't commit. They had a lot of guys they were committing money to still. That fell off. So now this is money that had to be spent. It's going to be Jed's fault if he manages this. But I think we see. It would not surprise me if we see something over the weekend. It really wouldn't, but I think early next week for Correa, and then shortly after that, it'll be a run on Swanson, because whatever teams miss out are going to be like, all right, now I need that guy, because there's holes to be filled.
Yeah, and honestly, I think in this situation, when it comes to these two shortstops, just kind of addressing a couple of points that you mentioned here, Juice. One being, if I'm Dansby, I'm probably pumped at the fact that it's just him and Correa left, and 8 to 10 teams are arguably in need of a shortstop, because, like you said, right, Correa is going to sign, and then every single team that missed on Correa is going to be at Dansby's door being like, what do we need to pay you to get you to come here? Yeah. And he's going to have this pick of the litter, essentially, of where he wants to go, how much money he wants, etc. So, like, if I'm Dansby Swanson, I'm sitting pretty, and I'm just like, yeah, Carlos, you go ahead and sign first, Big Pimp, because then as soon as you sign, everybody and their brother is coming to me and seeing what's up. But I think what makes the situation so interesting, like you said, I agree. I think it really is then on Jed. And I think Jed understands that to a fault, right? Because there is one thing to be said, at least with the shortstop position, in my opinion, right? There's one thing to be said, that as long as a guy can stay healthy, I'm not against a Correa getting a 9-year contract, because I know everybody's like, wow, that's a long time. Yeah, but he's only 37 when that contract ends. And you could move him to third base and he could still be productive. Look at Turner, who's on the market right now. He's played with the Dodgers. He's in his late 30s. Like, a lot of people don't realize how old he is. He's in his late 30s and has still been a very productive third baseman at the major league level. Who's to say that a Correa or a Swanson couldn't be that guy later in their career? I think regardless, the Cubs get their money's worth out of it, because I'll tell you right now, if Carlos Correa signs with the Cubs, Correa jerseys are going to be flying off the shelves, first off. So the merchandise dollars alone are going to make that investment worth it long term, and you're going to get more butts and seats, right? And this is really the first year in 2022 where we saw a significant drop off in attendance, and I think that's really what woke Tom up a little bit. The Tom drum to get beaten again, because he's feeling it in his pocketbook on game day. And that's where historically they never had an issue with that. Now they are for some reason. Well, not for some reason, but you get what I mean. Mm-hmm. So I really think it's going to be interesting. I agree with you. I think it happens before Christmas. And you and I talked a little bit pre-show. I'm all over the place, folks.
I think we all are. It's the holiday season, man.
It's the holiday season. Like you're trying to wrap up all your work stuff before,
you're sweating in your Foco blanket.
I'm actually not sweating anymore. I'm actually just very comfortable now. I'm very warm though. It's actually kind of like starting to like ease me to sleep, which is bad because I have work to do after the show. I will. You know how sometimes you get like things for free for like promotional, or you see it on like TikTok and Instagram and all this, and you go like, do you actually like that product, or are you just like putting on your best face to sell it? No, folks. Like, I will endorse this product through and through. Go to Foco and get yourself one of these, because like, if you're one of those big, like, I like curling up on the couch, because first off, my big ass can get my knees up into this thing. And I'm big, folks. I am just short of 6 foot. I'm a cool, calm, collective, about 270 pounds right now. So if I could get my big old butt, I have my knees tucked into this thing right now, sitting in a chair. That's how big this thing is. It's so comfy.
I need me one of those.
You need one. It's gonna lull you to sleep, and that's why I'm trying to just talk my face off. It's keeping me awake. But back on track here, really quick. I think I'm right there with you. I think these guys signed before the holidays, because you and I talked pre-show. Like, if you're a free agent, why would you want that lingering through your holidays, right? Like, how nice would it is to be like, I know where I'm going. I know how much I'm making. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. Versus the opposite of, right, where you're like having to field calls from your agent. Like, I'm sure these agents don't want to be having to call people on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day when they're with their families and drinking nice warm eggnog with a little whiskey in it. You know what I mean? Like, nobody wants to be doing that. Everybody wants to be settled. Obviously, guys like Boris are super agents and they don't have a choice. But I really do agree with you on that front, Juice. You read my mind. I think Correa, I agree. I don't think I would not be surprised if Correa signs by the weekend and Swanson signed by Christmas Eve as a result.
Yeah.
Because, he's going to want to hear from all the teams that are interested. Because reportedly there's like, I thought I saw something that said there's like 6 to 8 teams that want Swanson. And
I think there's more for Correa, or more for him than for Correa.
I think so. And I think there's a lot of teams that have accepted, like, hey, maybe we can't afford Correa, but we can afford Swanson. But again, I don't think Swanson's going to budge because, okay, Correa is going to sign. Only one team can have Correa. So the other teams that might have missed on Correa, that were heavy on Correa, not so much on Swanson, are, like you said, immediately going to turn to Swanson. So I think it
also too, like, makes me feel comfortable that the two teams in that report, one of them's us and the other is the team that he opted out of.
Yeah.
You look at if you read the tea leaves, like, is he really going to go back? I mean, maybe, but I feel like when you opt out, you're absolutely announcing that two things. You're announcing that you didn't want to be there, and you think you can play somewhere else. And if he has those two options, and I think if they're close, I think he picks the Cub offer because it's the Cubs. It's not the Twins. You know what I'm saying? Like, well, I don't know. That's just me. Maybe that's my Cub heart talking more.
No, I think you're spot on, and I'm actually gonna refer to a TikTok I watched just actually like half an hour before the show, maybe even a little longer than that. And from our friend in the comments, Mr. Jake Bunowski here, from Dingers, and he even said, because they talked on last night's show about Correa and like these people saying that San Francisco is more of a destination for Correa than Chicago is, which is a load of horse shit. And I totally agree with Jake on that front. But Jake even said it in there where he was talking, granted, his apples comparison was the Giants and the Cubs. I'm going to spin it and turn it to the Cubs and the Twins. If I look at the Cubs and the Twins, and if I'm Correa, and dollars are pretty similar, right? Maybe the Cubs is half, or not half, maybe a couple million less overall. You know what I mean? Like, we're talking maybe a $10 million total dollars difference over the course of the contract. I look at Minnesota. It's right. It's, okay, you got a couple of guys. like I think Twins, I don't think anything elite. That team was supposed to be so good because they went out and got Correa and they spent on pitching on a bunch of arms, and they were pretty much just as bad as the White Sox, who were in the same boat. And then the Guardians ran away with the division.
And the Guardians are getting better.
Right, and the Guardians are actually spending money, which is weird. Now, granted, not huge money, but they still went out and got two impactful players. Zanino's a solid catcher, and they went out and got Bell. They added power at first base.
Yep.
To a lineup that, truthfully, in my opinion, is very underrated, right? Because you have Stephen Kwan, who came out of nowhere.
Oh, I love Kwan.
Right, I do too. Not a big power guy, but he hits for high average. He can steal bases. He plays great defense. He does everything except the power tool, right? You have Ramirez, who I think Jose Ramirez is one of the best players of baseball that nobody talks about because
most underrated.
He plays in Cleveland. Yeah, because he plays in Cleveland. He's an AL MVP candidate almost every single season. And the only reason he's not talked about more is because he plays in Cleveland. If that dude played in LA, New York, Chicago,
he'd be the face of baseball.
Just like Trout, right? We talk about it. If Trout's not with the Angels, that dude's face is everywhere, right? Same idea, right? But really, like the Twins, and I don't know where the Twins minor league system sits. I know it's pretty good, but I have to feel like if you're Correa, you look at the Cubs, you know what's kind of coming along in the pipeline. You've seen what they've been doing. I think on paper, the Cubs are a better roster. I know the Twins had a better record at the end of last season, but a lot of that was because the Cubs pitching staff was literally down to nothing at the beginning of the season. I mean, the Cubs were one of the best teams in baseball in the second half. So this is a team that clearly, in the quote-unquote bare bones that it already is, can win games. Now you add a guy like Correa to the mix. You've added a guy like Bellinger to the mix. You're probably going to add at least one more name to the mix, maybe like a Trey Mancini or something of that nature. If I'm Carlos Correa, and plus with the Cubs having a top 10 farm system, I'm looking and going, the Cubs are in a pretty good spot for the future. And again, why the flying fuck would you not want to play at Wrigley Field? This guy's already talked about how great that before he was even drafted.
Yeah.
He was drafted 10 years ago.
He wanted so badly to be here.
Yeah. Like this is a guy that already has an affinity for the Cubs. Like he wants to play at Wrigley. So if dollars make the same difference, and even if the Twins come to you, maybe give you a little more, that $10 million over the life of the contract can be made up in endorsement deals in Chicago alone.
That was going to be my following.
Like,
I mean,
go where you want to play. And if he really wants to play in Chicago, fuck yeah, that's awesome. That's exciting because like I said, I'm assuming he'll get number one. I don't think anybody has number one on the roster right now. Number one jerseys are going to be flying off the shelves, right? I mean, he's gonna, he's your everyday shortstop. He's a Gold Glover. Like you said, and I think, and here was the point, Juice, that was something I wanted to address a little earlier that slipped my mind, but has come back to me. You mentioned the rule changes, and it's something that we've talked about very heavily here at Cubs on Tap over the course of this offseason so far, and even before the offseason, really. Imagine if the Cubs didn't land a shortstop. I have no problem with Nico Hoerner playing short, but who the fuck's playing second base?
Yeah.
Nobody that's going to help you with the new rule changes. It's not Nick Madrigal. You probably have to play Christopher Morel there just in terms of athleticism in order to cover that hole. Now, that, in my opinion, makes the Cubs getting Correa even more important, or Swanson, because, yes, I agree. Yeah, thank you, Jake. Send Madrigal to the fucking sun. He could change his number.
I thought they traded him already. Sorry.
Yeah, we haven't seen much of him. We don't know where he's been, but no, Madrigal doesn't wear 0. Sorry, Blake. That's Stroh. That's my boy Strosha wearing number 0. But back on track.
He should wear no. He should wear no number.
That would be I want him to wear double. Can 00 be a number? That would be.
No, I was talking about Nick Madrigal. I was saying.
Oh yeah.
Nick Madrigal should wear no number.
Send Nick Madrigal to like the Oakland Athletics or something at this point. For all I care.
He'd be a great athletic.
Be a perfect A, because he would actually have like an okay season out there too. Like he would hit like 300, and he would have.
That outfield is ginormous. Isn't it? It's one of the biggest in baseball, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he would have like 80 doubles in that field because he's not getting triples. I don't know if his legs are long enough. Anyway, enough of the short fields. But that honestly to me is a bigger problem if the Cubs miss on shortstop is because of the rule changes. I'm not worried about Nico Hoerner, but you need somebody to play at second base spot. That's why I would argue, and I bet you this was a conversation that Jed had with Nico at the end of the season. He mentioned that going way back to his press conference at the end of the year. He said, we sat down and talked to Nico. I bet you the first thing he said was, Nico, don't be upset if we're looking at shortstops this season. It's not that we don't think you can play the position. We just think having you at second as a Gold Glove caliber infielder plus another Gold Glove caliber infielder in either Correa or Swanson is going to make their middle infield defense amazing. And that's huge, especially for pitchers like the Cubs have, because really outside of at least this point of what's been established, outside of Justin Steele, most of the Cubs pitchers in the rotation pitch to contact.
Yeah, not a lot of swing and miss stuff.
Sure as hell does. I mean, they all have the swing and miss stuff, but they deliver their arsenal and they set up their arsenal in a way to induce ground ball outs and weak contact.
Right.
Especially like if the Cubs were to bring back Drew Smyly too. Same idea. We saw it last year with, Taillon's not a huge strikeout guy anymore. He keeps guys off the base pads and he gets outs. That's all we care about. I don't care how you get the out, just get the out. I think that is, in my opinion, the most critical reason. And at least it's come down to the point where we feel confident, I think, at this point as Cubs fans. And I even talked to Mitch. So Mitch Nims over at Dingers was supposed to join us on tonight's show. Unfortunately, family's dealing with the flu, and so he's on dad duty. But he, I had me kind of privately before the show, about an hour, and was like, he said, I feel very confident we're getting Carlos Correa, and I was like, you know what, I kind of feel that way too, because maybe the Cubs missed on some of these guys we wanted, like you mentioned before, Vasquez, and they didn't trade for Murphy, and they didn't do this, and they didn't do that. You know how they say winning cures all ills, Juice?
Mm-hmm.
In this case, winning the Carlos Correa sweepstakes cures all those you should have signed, you should have did this, because you got arguably the number one free agent. I don't think there's any other guy that most people would put above Correa on this year's market. Like, he is the best player available for teams to sign.
Yeah, at his age. He would be Judge, maybe. Yeah. Judge, maybe.
Judge was probably the only other one. So, Correa and Judge were your top two. I mean, that would, I think, make everybody pumped in Chicago. Just like, they could still use another pitcher, but that's okay. We're going on a week-long bender to celebrate the fact that Carlos Correa is a Chicago Cub. And I think that's where we're all at mentally, right? Of like, I don't know about you, Juice, like my holidays would be awesome if Carlos Correa or even Dansby Swanson, obviously we're going to shoot for the stars and we're going to try to go get the big fish, but I wouldn't be mad about the little bit smaller fish that still fits our needs and does what we needed to do. Because damn it, Juice, how cool would it be next year when we're all there at opening day as they announce the team and you just hear Carlos Correa and everybody goes absolutely fucking ape shit.
I'm greedy though. I want the iPad. I don't want the knockoff, whatever Microsoft tablet thing is.
You don't want the Kindle Fire?
No. I want the iPad. Put all your assets towards Correa, and I think a lot is forgiven, like you said. So, yeah, I think that over the course of this offseason, it's been kind of like a roller coaster. In the beginning, I think we were like, oh, hell yeah, right out the gate. You add a center fielder in Bellinger that's a great bounce back candidate, and Taillon, and you have these initial run of hey, awesome, look, they're going out, they're spending the money. But now I feel like the market in terms of just I think the shortstop market was always their priority, and maybe they're focusing a lot of eggs in that basket because they understand where baseball is going, how important it is to add a bat opposed to pitching. I mean, there's so many names that we've talked about over the course of last year that are it's plausible to think that, Hayden Wisniewski has a great year as a starter. It's plausible to think that Kyle Hendricks reinvents himself and becomes a 3 or a 4 that is serviceable, a guy who eats up innings and can win you some ball games. Pitching wise, I always wanted them to add a starter, and they did. And I was like, if they added a top of the rotation name, I will be ecstatic because pitching is how I build my baseball teams. But if the Cubs are content with their prospects that they have and they feel like they have a couple aces in the making there, I don't blame them for going out and having feeler deals where it's like, hey, we'd really love to have you, but we understand that you're probably going to get a better offer somewhere else.
Mm.
If you want to be a part of this team at this dollar amount, this is what it is. There won't be a counter, negotiation with it. I'm okay with it if it means that they're confident in Ben Brown and in Hayden Wisniewski and Kyle Hendricks to maybe, eat up some innings. And, there's names that we saw over the course of last year, like Schwarmer and Estrada, and like some of these names that were very, serviceable at the end of the year. And I mean, Assad, there were names that we talked about out of the bullpen or as starters that were very much serviceable and showed that they can pitch in the big leagues. And if you're adding the defense, I think it only makes them better, like we kind of talked about over the course of this episode. So, I'm not mad that they missed out. Like, I'm upset, but like you said, a lot of it ggets cured if they just add Correa.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned a couple of those names, Juice, and I think, and this is what this is something we've talked about at Cubs on Tap, and we obviously talked about it as more of a season perspective earlier in the year. But now you start to think about it. Like, realistically, I think the next pitcher they sign is a 1-year deal. I think it's a Kluber on a 1-year contract. I think it's, somebody like that. I don't think they're, going out and giving big dollars to Carlos Rodon. I don't think they're even going to give big dollars to a guy like, Nathan Eovaldi. Really, I think their sweet spot is a guy like either Corey Kluber, maybe returning a guy like Drew Smyly, a Noah Syndergaard on a 1-year contract. Like, that's probably where they're going with that next stuff or that next, pitching signing.
Arm.
Yeah, because I really do think, like you said, I think they are confident in what's coming through the system. And a lot of these guys, I think, are closer than people realize because you mentioned just a couple of those names. Who's to say Jordan Wicks isn't ready next year at some point in the middle of the season? He's
I'll
already
tell you what, Ron, I watched a lot of Jordan Wicks, he's as advertised. And it would not surprise me if he cruises through AA super quick and then finds himself at AAA with a chance of knocking on the door. But there's Killian, there's Wisniewski, there's, Ben Brown.
Ben Brown's a big
there's
one
options. There's so much potential with this starting market that I don't blame them for being like, shit, in 5 years, I may need these spots because I have, mid 20-year-olds who are throwing gas and getting guys out of AAA. I don't want to get tied into a deal I can't, get out of. And you can never have enough pitching, but you want to make sure that you have cheap pitching at this point because you're probably buying position players. It's going to be the complete opposite flip of what it was from the 2016 run. So
you stole the words right out of my mouth, Juice. I honestly, I told my dad this earlier this offseason because he and I always shoot the shit about the Cubs. And I said, I don't think you will ever see the Cubs spend a big pitching contract like a John Lester contract ever again, at least not in the Jed, Carter, Dan Kantrovitz era, because they are so focused on their ability to develop pitching, and we've seen that already in the bullpen, let alone at the starting level with guys like who I think, again, we're starting to see that taste with Steele and with Keegan and now with Wisniewski. And there's another wave coming with guys like DJ Hers and Jordan Wicks and Ben Brown. And there's guys that are coming that are going to, and again, who's to say Killian doesn't get it right and look better than he did at the MLB level last season?
Yeah, the only name I'll say is Shohei Ohtani because he's
sure,
but
absolutely.
He's a unicorn. He's
right. You break out the really pretty Pokeball to go get a guy like that.
The Banks truck too, and then just dump money at his front door.
And you could also make the argument that you're paying for two players. Really is how you need to look at it. You're paying for an all-star slugger and an all-star pitcher. So
his market's going to be so fun to watch next year. It's going to be
disgusting. He honest to God might get $50 million a year. Easily.
I think that's maybe worth it. I really do.
It's going to be interesting, but again, that's where I'm at though. Like, I think really they see their ability to develop pitching. And because look at just this last draft, we talked about it as soon as the draft concluded that they took 15 pitchers out of 20 rounds. They took 5 position players. They're not worried about position players. They have plenty of those. They traded for a lot of those guys, right? They went and got your PCA. They signed a Matt Mervis as an undrafted free agent. He would have been their 6th round pick without a doubt. Like, they went and got all these guys. Like they've got enough hitting in their pool, right? They're just trying to build those arms. They'll go pay for the bats. And I think that's where you're going to see their biggest money, right? Tyon was a nice deal, 4 years at $17 million a year. Average annual value, who got less than Marcus Stroman, mind you. Obviously, Stroh's deal was a little shorter, but he 17 mil a year is really not bad for a guy who could be your probably comfortably right now. You could say he's the number 3 behind Stroh.
And he takes the ball every 5th day. Like,
yeah,
that's the
absolutely.
Other thing. Like, he pitches.
That's a guy that you feel good about being on the mound. He doesn't walk a lot of guys, and he just gets outs, man. And that's cool and tough. And he's outside of the Tommy John and double Tommy's. You said it twice. And outside of having even when he had testicular cancer, he missed like 3 starts, and he came back and pitched like 28 starts for the Pittsburgh Pirates that year. Like, the dude's an absolute bulldog, and that's what we like around here is a blue collar city. But man, oh man, I am telling you right now, like, they're gonna go spend, and I am. With every waking hour that has passed, at least today, Juice, especially with that latest report from Jim Bowden, I really do think they're going out and they're getting Correa. And when they do, I know we're going to go ape shit. I know, our friends over at Dingers are going to go ape shit. I think the whole Cubs community is going to go ape shit because, again, dude, just like, you know how you always go to like an opening day and they announce the players and they're like, some guys get like, and then the big guys get the roar. That's going to be what happens if Correa signs at the Cubs convention. We're going to be deaf because we're going to be there. We're going to be deaf.
I know when the schedule gets fully released 2 days from now. So
yeah, 15th.
Right? Today
15th.
is 2 days from now.
Today's the 13th. Yeah. So, we're going to have the full lineup. I saw they announced today Ian Happ is doing a live compound pod.
Which will be fun.
At the convention. That'll be dope. Definitely.
A lot of Nico Horner rumor that he'll be one of the guests on that.
As he should be. He was one of the original panelists long ago when they first started the whole thing. So, yeah, man, it's going to be a lot of fun. But Juice, I mean, we've beat the metaphorical horse to death here about Correa and Swanson, and at this point now we're just holding our breath a little bit and waiting and watching. I want to ask you any final thoughts on what we've discussed today? Any other things that you have in mind before we start to close this thing down?
I'll say one thing. Go ahead and get yourself a FOCO blanket. And then and to add to it, I'll end this episode like I began it, which was, as much as I hate Aaron Rodgers, it's a little Aaron Rodgers relax, a little deep breaths.
Relax.
We can scream and yell at the clouds when we don't get one of them. Until then, I'll stay optimistic.
Yeah, absolutely. And just really quick, I want to share this because I like this comment. And again, also really quick, humongous shout out to every single person that jumped in the comments tonight. This was a crazy comment section tonight. We love it when you guys are active. Because again, if you have been following us and maybe you're a little newer to the comment section, that's okay. But for those that were riding with us during the season and jumping in the comments, we will steer our conversations mid-show to a comment if you give us a good one. So
damn right.
Again, just a super big shout out to everybody. Jeremiah, William, obviously our boy Jake, Scott, Blake, everybody that jumped in the comment section tonight. Thank you for doing so because again, you guys help make the show a lot of fun for us as well. But I want to show William Rivera's comment here really quick because I think this is an interesting guy that we didn't discuss, but I just want to bring it up. Michael Brantley is a free agent, a guy that was kind of tied to the Cubs last year. He's getting older. He's still a quality bat. Maybe for a 1-year deal, that's another guy they can go out and just kind of, throw like, hey, we'll throw a couple of mil at you. Come in for 1 season, hit some DH, play some corner outfield for us on days that guys like Happ and say I need a breather. Come on in. I think that wouldn't be a bad move, especially for a guy like Brennan Davis, because then you're not trying to rush Brennan along to get up and be that 4th outfielder. And you know what I mean? Like you can actually let him just play at AAA for a while because there's less pressure. So
I'm fine with that move. It's like I said early on in the episode, I think 1-year deals you absolutely need to jump at those this year. Cause like I said earlier, there's a wide array of where this team could fall in terms of competing next year. So why not? That's it. If it ends up being a bust of a signing, it's 1 year. Who cares?
There is no such thing as a bad 1-year deal. That is a very, very real fact. There is no such thing as a bad 1-year deal. My final thought, Juice. I said it as my tweet sharing that Swanson Correa article I wrote today. All I want for Christmas is a shortstop, not my two front teeth. And that's really what I'm waiting for right now. I got those. I don't need those. Those are fine. Damn it, just give me a shortstop for Christmas, and I don't need any other gifts because that'll be the greatest gift I can receive is knowing that the Cubs are truly going to be fun to watch in 23 because they're actually making the necessary moves. But Juice, as you mentioned as well, be sure to get your wearable blankets, folks. I'm telling you right now, I've had this thing on this whole show. It is the most comfortable thing ever. And it might lull me to sleep, which is bad because I have work to do after this as well. But nonetheless, go check out our friends over at foco.com. You can check out all the cool stuff that they have. Obviously, these are cool, but there's plenty of other cool stuff, especially if you're looking for some last minute gifts, even maybe for yourself. Who knows? You can gift yourself for Christmas. It's fully acceptable. So go check out Foco for all these cool things. And again, you can get yourself one of these. And I love this thing. I might, like I said, Juice, I might wear this for like the next 5 episodes we do of Cubs on Tap, pretty much throughout the rest of the offseason. If it's cold outside, I'm probably going to have this on. So, but as always, I want to remind everybody Cubs on Tap is one of 2 official Cubs podcasts for the On Tap Sports Network now with our boys over at Dingers. We are your post-game, I guess, show, really. But we are one of the 2 Cubs podcasts here at On Tap Sports Network. Check out all of our great work on tapsportsnet.com and at On Tap Sportsnet on social media. Follow us here at the pod specific accounts. We're at Cubbies on Tap on Twitter and Instagram. You can follow Dingers. They're at Dinger Cubs on Twitter. You can check out myself. I am at Luce on Tap. Juice is at Juice on Tap. Follow all of our other great contributors, all the Dingers boys as well, over on the Bluebird app, and engage in conversation with us. We're trying to build a Cubs community. That's really something that you're going to see a lot of as listeners and fans of ours over the coming months. And so we highly encourage you to be a part of said community. And you know the drill. Bulls, Bears, Blackhawks, we got it all. And as our friends over on the South Side continue to sulk, send your buddies that like the South Siders over to them as well, because they need company, because misery loves company. And, you know, we want to still support our boys over there. But again, thank you to everybody that joined us in the comments. Juice, as always, thank you to you. On Tap Sports Network. Be sure to check out what's on tap in Chicago sports. Always a pleasure, my friend.
Always.
Hopefully the next time we're on a microphone, we're talking about Carlos Correa signing with the Chicago Cubs. But until then,
hot take, Ron, we will be.
I like it. My friend. What do you say? We get out of here the only way we know how? Here at Cubs on Tap?
Fuck the Cardinals.
And let's go Cubs.